Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Digital Drop podcast. Today I'm joined by Faris, Tab and Nej. And for a change, Nej, what are we talking about today?
Thank you, Ida. So what we wanted to talk about today was we wanted to share a little bit of our experience about engagement between an agency and a client organization, and what trends we've noticed over the years that lead to a more successful relationship with more positive outputs versus situations where the relationship is not as successful and it's more difficult to get positive outputs. So with that topic in mind, the three of you are at GRM some of our brightest and most experienced account managers. So you have been the key people that have led the interface between us as an agency and client organizations. So I'm going to put the questions back to you guys and ask you, I'll ask each one of you to think of one of your most successful client relationships and then describe to our listeners and our viewers and to us what you feel made that relationship particularly successful.
Okay, probably because I'm the longest here out of three of us, coming to my 11th year. I can probably explain a good example of a happy client that's been with us for for full 11 years. Since I joined GRM, I think this was my first client from my day one. So the relationship has ups and downs, as with anything. And we get some really good projects. Sometimes we have a little bit of hiccups here and there during our projects. But what I think led to this long-term and happy relationship is the transparency and communication between us as an agency and our client. So we were able to understand more about the client, not just needs, but also them as individuals and their roles, what they're trying to do as part of that business, but also then, as I said earlier on, to understand what the business needs to achieve. And I think with the good communication, transparency from us as an agency, and being upfront with where we can help and what we can do for the client, I think that ultimately led to a long-term relationship and something where the client was always happy to share their thoughts when they're happy, some things maybe when they're frustrated with certain things, although, we through that time improved every single time when there was a bit of a frustration. So that communication is something that I think helped us to retain the client for this long. And every time we had a bit of a hiccup, it was the reaction that we sort of had at that point. So we never wanted to just leave if there's a problem, we always wanted to tackle the problem, understand how we can improve this so it never happens in the future. So I think this is, from my perspective, something that I'm quite proud of and where I think we're really successful.
Okay, so you think the key is in recognizing that there's going to be problems and accepting that there's problems, but the key to success is in good communication and how you react to those problems.
Exactly. Because there always will be some problems. We can't neglect that there's a risk of potential problems, but it's most of the time that reaction that really is going to take the next step wherever it goes.
Okay, so Metab, can you give us one example from your long list of clients of what you found to be particularly positive traits in that relationship that set it up for success?
Yeah, I think, look, first of all, to echo Ida's points, like we all have clients similar and work with clients similar to that. And that communication, when you walk through the halls of our offices, we have the, quality, integrity, and value as our three core principles as an organization. And they really are what underpin us as an organization. And that kind of goes to what Ida was saying about that relationship she's talking about in particular, but transcends to pretty much all the relationships we have. Not all in the past have been successful, and there's reasons for that, obviously. For me, I think a key point to our success is determined a little bit by what an organization that we're working with, a client, wants from us. So how do we offer value to that client? So one of those key principles that I've talked about. Now, for me, adding value comes at sitting in certain conversations at the earliest stages, because, you know, we are experts in our industry. We're digital experts, and we can offer digital perspectives. And, you know, through our relationships with clients and our jobs as, you know, client success managers, account managers, digital strategists, we also are able to identify, you know, business objectives and how to turn those business objectives into digital sort of outputs, if we call it that, in digital strategies. So for me, what underpins, really to be summarized, what underpins that success is having the ability to add value as early as possible in conversations with those clients that we are really successful with, and helping them form their strategies.
Okay, so you think, or your experience would show that when you're brought into a conversation makes a key difference?
For sure. And I think that a lot of it depends on, like I said, what the client wants from us. If they want us to be doers, and, you know, they come to us at the end and go, hey, do this, it's probably where we offer least value, because we go and do it. You know, we're not having as much input. But if they bring us into the conversations really early, it's where we can help them identify maybe things that they have not considered. And maybe the client can help us identify things that we might not have considered if we're just given the end brief to go just implement this. So very much so.
Okay, so Faris, you haven't been with us for as long, and Metab and Ida have both been here for as long as I can remember, certainly. So they've seen an evolution in us as a business, and the difference in the role that we play as an agency. With you being a kind of a fresh face, it'd be interesting to get your perspective as you've come into this agency and you've been thrusted into some client relationships. What's your impression in you know, what would you take are positives from the relationships that you're involved with? Have you identified any negatives or particular challenges?
Yeah, pretty much. Account management is always, let's say, the same science on every place in the world. If we take into account everything that Ida and Tabs have already said, it's the synergy that makes the frictionless relationship with our client. And within the years, we try to build a trust-based relationship with being always fully transparent, and always we have to be proactive. So I think if we take in account everything that three of us said, I think it would make a good complete account manager, or good complete relationship with your account or client, as we already said. My experience from this agency and my previous experiences, they have been varying in the business model context, but always account manager has to make frictionless relationship with the client that's based on trust and transparency. That's, I think, the most aligned points of being of creating a successful relationship within years.
Yeah, I like that word, frictionless, because you know, to throw my 2 cents in, what I suppose you guys are more have deeper relationships with our clients because you're working with them on a day-to-day basis, whereas from my perspective within the organization, I get involved in a piecemeal way, usually at the outset, and then periodically throughout the relationship. And the trends that I've noticed with, you know, I ask myself as you know, as a business owner, why is it that with some clients we have immense success, and then every so often, not too often, happily, but every so often we have a client relationship that no matter what we try to do just does not go right. And the trend that I've noticed, it goes back to what you said, Meta. It's about being brought into the conversation at the right time. But I think that the bigger part is the recognition of the fact that you've got value to add to a conversation at a strategic level. And it's the recognition of the value that we as an agency have. Would you agree with that? And maybe give a couple of examples where that hasn't been the case, how that's come across from your perspective?
Yeah, from my perspective, I 100% agree with that. Now, it falls back to what a client wants us to do, really, because as I say, when you're given the role of a doer, just go implement this, the value you offer is so much less. And that then transcends across not just, oh, you're going to do this, but expectations of a client. Because if you're just implementing what they want you to implement without any input into it, you have no input in the outcomes of it. So, you know, what we discuss with all of our clients are, let's set KPIs. What defines success of our relationship and what we're trying to achieve? Now, when we set KPIs, what we're able to do is work towards those KPIs and look at every decision and go, oh, is this going to help us increase the number of members? Or is this going to help us convert more sales, or whatever those KPIs might be? And if it doesn't fit into that set, we generally say to our clients that, look, we don't think that this is going to achieve X. So if there's a different reason for doing it, maybe it's brand awareness, which wasn't a key KPI, then okay, but really let's not do it. But if we're just getting given the brief to just go implement, we're not having that discussion on a higher level. And then if things don't tend to meet KPIs, if they are being set, we've actually had no input in that, but the kind of expectation falls on us. So it's a misalignment then in the relationship and the outcomes of that relationship.
Yeah, I think you hit nail on the head there. It's the expectations actually of the overall engagement. Because as you said, we can engage at various levels, but there's certain levels where we add a lot more value. And I think the reality is a lot of agencies will have your best interests at heart. However, depending on the level of information you disclose to them, they will be able to do a good job or will not be able. So I think it's also an onus on the client side to understand what kind of an agency they want. Do they want doers? Then if they want just somebody to do the job, there's got to be certain expectations and certain KPIs for that only. But then if you want people, an organization, an agency to think together with you on a consultative basis, on a strategic level, but also to deliver things, then, you know, you go and set other sort of KPIs and other expectations within the agency. And I think one other element that's probably important that I've missed out is the integrity of an agency in this overall relationship. And let's say the higher your, let's say if you as an agency engage with a client on a very high level, on a strategic level, there could be some elements of that work that you can't deliver as an agency because your skill set is not that broad. But if you've got enough integrity and the right attitude and correct communication, then, you know, agency should have the right to say to the client that, you know, they aren't maybe skilled enough to deliver a certain part of it. So I think there's also an integrity part in the overall relationship.
Okay, so trust, integrity, transparency. How I used to describe this in certain meetings, and look, I think it's important to recognize that as an agency, we have, you know, we've been going for 14 years. In the early days, going back to the doers type work that we would get, we we would take it, because as a growing young agency, you're keen to get projects because you can't command a seat at the decision-making table. But now that we've become much maturer and more credible as an agency, I never thought I'd say this, but we often refuse certain projects and relationships where we feel that we can't potentially add that value. Now, the way in which I've usually described this as being, what we need to try and avoid is a two-party system or three-party system. And what I mean by that is when we engage with an organization, the objectives have to be aligned, right? So we as an agency want to deliver the project on time, on budget, successfully, and we want to retain the client for a long-term relationship. This is our bread and butter, how we survive, how we make our bread, so to speak, moving forward, is on those 5, 6 onwards year relationships. So the only way we're going to get there is if we add value. And I think that one symptom that I've noticed with the relationships that you guys have certainly found most challenging and come back, discussed internally in a very frustrated way, has been where there was a lot more of an us and them scenario, where the client's trying to get as much as they can for the least amount that they can. They're trying to get you to commit and kind of specify in minute detail everything you're going to be doing 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the line, and it kind of kills your creativity. Do you still see a lot of that, and is there any pattern in terms of the type of organizations that we see that in?
Yeah, I think you mentioned, Nej, that as we've grown as an agency, so, it is 13, 14 years ago we started, it had joined 11 years ago, I joined 10 years ago. At that point, like you said, we would take those engagements of doers, because really that's what we were as an agency. We were in our infancy, and as we've grown, added skill sets internally, gone from being web developers to creative as well, to then ongoing digital engagements and digital strategy and SEO and PPC. And as we've sort of broadened our skill sets, I think we found that we now enter more relationships that have with the right profile of client. And when I say the right profile of client, I mean those that are looking for organizations that will add that additional value. And we've found better ways to filter out as well organizations that potentially won't take on the whole value that we think we can bring to the table. So in terms of success now, our engagement model, and I think we've all mentioned the word trust, our engagement model falls a lot on the trust, which comes from the quality that we deliver and the value that we deliver, in terms of, okay, let us be proactive, let us think, let us come to you guys and say, this is going to work, or we think that this is going to work. Let's trial this, let's trial that. And we know, and with the clients that we know or who know, that it's not an exact science. So we can educatedly guess that if you have a user journey that works in this way, it should lead to the right results. But also understand that we can monitor that, we can use analytics on a constant basis and tweak these things, because it's not going to be an exact science. And now I think the profile of clients that we tend to work with understand this, have those internal sort of minds that do understand this, and give us the freedom to do so. And I think that helps us so much more now, have successful relationships more regularly and show outcomes and results more regularly.
So, Ida, in terms of your, should we say, more challenging situations with clients, have you seen any particular symptom that becomes a limiting factor? Obviously, trust is key, and we need to establish that trust. But before you've got an ability to demonstrate your credibility, there's still a point of engaging and getting to right type of engagement for you to be able to then truly demonstrate your creativity? What would you say are the most limiting factors for us as an agency, where in a scenario where a client is approaching us and they are setting the terms of engagement, so to speak, or insisting on working in certain ways?
Yeah, I mean, there were not that many, luckily, clients in the past, but there were a couple of them that were challenging. And I think the first part is to establish that trust. And it really is down to us to demonstrate not just credibility to our clients, but also to get to that next level where, look, relationship is a two-way thing. So it's got to be both sides being invested in this. And as time goes and as we progress with engagement and everything else, this trust is slowly built, which is great. But where we see a little bit of, or where I used to see a little bit of difficulty with some of the clients in the past, is where we would not necessarily have direct access to people who are actually coming up with these ideas and challenges that we need to resolve. So as an agency, we always ask question why. We always start with why. We can deliver whatever we've been tasked to deliver, but only if we truly understand the reason behind this particular project change or whatever it is. Only when we understand that fully, then we are able to either deliver it, the way that the client wanted, but also at the same time, we could maybe see a better angle to deliver something or tackle a particular challenge. And then we can, in a nice way, challenge the client and see, look, maybe there's another perspective to it. Because as an agency, we constantly see different challenges with our clients. We constantly invest time in technologies, in research and everything else. So where I see a bit of a difficulty is when we do not have direct access to people who are coming up with these projects, challenges, where we're just talking to people on the ground who are there more or less just to do that instruct us what to deliver, pretty much.
So and I'll ask all three of you this, but you just get one answer each. You have to ask one question at the beginning of a relationship that's going to set that relationship up for success. Or you need to identify one element. What would that element be? Ida, suppose you go first.
I mean, it's a tough question. There's many questions I would ask, in all honesty. Like there's a massive list of it. But I don't know, maybe I'll relate to Tab while I'm thinking in the background.
Yeah, well, look, I agree with you, Ida. I was thinking while you were thinking. So I think really, there's two questions. And if you're saying I'll ask one of them, it's probably going to be, what do you want from your agency? Because that will help me identify, or us identify, whether we're the right fit for that client. And I think if you ask that question, then it opens up a lot of other questions. But as an outset question, that might be something that I would look to sort of ask.
I have to choose and not to repeat the question, Tab's question. It would be similar. I would ask about expectations, because I always want to align the expectations from the client with our capacity. So I think that would be maybe the first question I would ask a client to provide me answer with.
Okay.
Sometimes you have too big expectations from client, and you have to align. So the amount of alignment in the beginning, I think it's the right path to go for start, let's say.
Yeah, so it's all about setting expectations and how we're ultimately going to measure the success of whatever it is that we're doing, right? So. Yeah, because we need to I suppose, agree a fair playing field whereby, as an agency, we know what our focus is going to be and how the success of the work that we deliver is actually going to be measured. So what do you do in a situation where you're touched on to not having access to the people that are making certain decisions and so on? So how do you deal with that situation, and why would there ever be a scenario where you're not, as a trusted partner, where you're not being given access or brought into the conversations where certain decisions are made?
It depends really on the organization, because at the time there was only a project team that was responsible to deliver a particular project from the client end, and obviously we're the implementation partner. But maybe we didn't know to ask right questions in order to get in front of the individuals who were tailoring the actual strategy. Maybe they didn't recognize us as a strategic partner, they recognized us as a doers. So this is, one of those tough relationships from the past where maybe we pigeonholed ourselves in a certain way, and then it was very hard to go backtrack certain things and, get on another level with a client. So I think, look, we've learned since then how to make things better and how to embed in the organization in a different way, so that they can see that we are here more to add value, obviously to do the work as well. But for us, it's important to understand why we're doing things, what you're trying to achieve, how you're going to measure the impact of the work that we do, and to understand if there's anything that your internal skill or any of the other partners can deliver, so that we can see if it's something we can do, or we can refer you to somebody else, or we know some tools that can do it for you.
When you speak retrospectively about some cases, I thought of we have to respect the natural cycle of every agency or every business or every person and its maturity. Through years of performing campaigns, doing websites, we gain some maturity, better understanding, and that's the thing we cannot skip.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we certainly have matured as an agency, and it's a very fine balance between setting a way or dictating a way that we would prefer to work in, whilst also being customer centric in our engagement model. Because I can't think of any two clients that we work with in exactly the same way, but again, the ones that seem to be more successful, we work almost as a single team. It's a very integrated team between their key individuals and a variety of their key individuals and key individuals on our side. Whereas the ones that seem to be more challenging are the ones where there is a single point of contact within a client organization that's effectively funneling through communication, and that's coming through a single point of contact on our side, because not only is it creating efficiencies in communication, it creates loss in translation, it creates a very limited perspective for us as an agency into that client's organization, the driving factors, and so on. Okay, so I suppose if we wanted to just wrap up and say come up with a few key pointers to successfully in engaging with your agency, what advice would we give to an organization that's looking to start a relationship with a new agency? How would we advise them to approach that?
I'd say probably, maybe I can start with a couple of them and then relate to the rest of you guys. But it's the transparency and communication would be the first one, in giving the full background to the agency on why you're doing this project, what you're trying to achieve, and not to be shy with the agency to talk about your problems, to talk about the internal skills that you have that you might not have, or the different needs that you have, and also not to be shy to share the budget. I think a lot of agencies are a little bit reserved to they're just not open enough to say about their yearly budgets or whatever the, you know, next few years, few months, whatever those are. But I think if agency can understand what budgets you have to work with, they can then structure a plan for you that will give you the best value for that money. So, you know, it's a relationship, and I'm saying it again, it's got to be both sides. It needs to be invested in this overall relationship and engagement. And I think that's probably for me to start with. What do you think, Tab?
Yeah, I think correct. And we haven't touched on budget, but that's that transparency from both sides, because like you say, identifying or knowing your budget, and maybe sometimes an organization doesn't have a budget to base it on business cases, but you know, it will help a good agency add that value. I think additionally to what you said, is expectation setting, and either knowing what your objectives are and your KPIs are, or talking with the relevant agency or agencies that you're talking to identify those KPIs, because those KPIs are going to be the foundation and the driver for pretty much all the decisions you make. So, and it's not just digitally, as a business, what are your KPIs? And that will really help set, you know, the men from the boys, to use a term in terms of agencies, and what and how they might achieve those goals. Faris, I don't know if we've taken up all the key bits or if you've got anything to add on to that.
Yeah, I can add just a couple of things to wrap up. Maybe we missed one thing, as we have not just any agency that's working with variety of clients. You have clients coming from different industries, and you cannot be expecting every individual to be, let's say, to have the certain skill set to understand what you're doing. That's just an understanding of your client. If the client doesn't have the knowledge, it's our task to educate them on the same level, to put them on the same level as us. Also build your relationships on trust, value, integrity, proactivity, and that's pretty much if you want to have successful relation with your clients or your agencies. It's like a two-sided road, or is it the same?
Two-way street.
Two-way street, yeah. Sorry.
Your English is getting much better by the day, I must say, Faris. So, okay, I suppose, so the keys to a successful relationship is transparency, clear understanding and expectation setting, clear definitions on how the relationship is going to be measured through KPIs and business objectives. And I suppose the one that I would add to the whole mix, and that is you know, see your agency as a partner in whatever it is that you're doing, that's got the same objective, whose objective is to help you achieve your objectives. Because from an agency perspective, we want every relationship to be a long-term relationship, and the only way that we're going to achieve that is if it's mutually beneficial long-term. So we know that an agency job is to help companies achieve objectives, generate more revenue. So, you know, again, that boils down to trust, right? And alignment of interest, to coin a phrase. But okay, well, I think that's a little bit of a discussion that will hopefully be useful to anybody that's listening or watching this. If to anybody that is listening or watching, if you like the content of this conversation and you'd like us to talk more on this topic or anything along those lines, then do the clicking, the likes, the subscribes, the shares, so that we know what's getting traction and we know where to focus on as far as our content creation is concerned. Thank you, team.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.